Sasha Martinengo.
Storming down the pit lane.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time.
We are going to
All
dissect
Sasha.co.za.
the whole of the European Grand Prix from yesterday because I think it needs it. So many talking points about, another extraordinary Grand Prix. I just don't know how Formula One can get any better. That's basically what it comes down to. So stick around, Gary.
I don't know how it can get any better. In my opinion, right now, Formula One is one of the best motorsports in the world. I mean, you've always had the razzmatazz and the technology of the cars and the speed and the sound and everything else. And there was always comments about, overtaking being difficult and what have you. Formula One have got it right at the moment. I mean, I don't think it's ever been better.
Yeah, and the thing about it as well is we've got to assume that in the next 12 races that we've got, we are going to have a race where we go, oh, that wasn't so much fun. I mean, we can't have a season of 20 races that just one gets better than the next.
No, look, I mean, you're going to have a couple of races that won't be as good. I mean, we spoke about Monaco yesterday and saying it was a boring race, but, in all honesty, the front runners finished within a couple of seconds of each other. It was Monaco, so it's pretty much a normal situation, but it's still a good Grand Prix. We're getting spoilt now because the races are getting so good that we expect it all the time, as you say, and it may not be like that all the way through, but it is really down to Pirelli tyres to a large degree. If they decide to bring a compounded tyre that is going to be marginal, then we can have a good race. And I think that's what they're learning now, and they've got to go for it. And kudos to them; they've done a great job at that.
Yeah, I must echo that as well. I mean, there's a lot of pro and against when it comes to Pirelli and the tyres, but it is making for extraordinary racing, and it's also we're seeing now that the drivers are now beginning to understand how the tyre works and how they're pacing themselves during a Grand Prix, as opposed to just going flat out, change tyres, go again. They're actually having to think. For a racing driver, that's quite a big thing, Gary?
But this is motor racing, and this is what they've got to do. So that's why I was so surprised when you heard Schumacher complaining about the tyres, and a couple of team owners, drivers have said, well, the tyres are falling off too much, or whatever it may be. Motor racing is about looking after them, getting the best out of them at all times, and learning, as you say, when to drive and how hard to drive them. That is racing, and that is what I'm loving about it as well. It's because, as you said, it's a thinking man's game now. You've got to make the right calls in the pit wall. The driver's got to do the right thing out in the circuit. I mean, this is what F1's supposed to be.
I got to tell you, I watched the race again last night when I got home. And, just to pick up some other points, just to see, maybe we missed something or a bit harsh in some of the commentary there afterwards. It just was a brilliant race. There's lots to talk about, and we got to start off with Sebastian Vettel. First of all, he is now the center of qualifying. I mean, the way that, if we looked at it, Gary, on Saturday, we were watching, and they were within hundredths of a second, all of the drivers, and then all of a sudden qualifying comes, everyone's within hundredths of a second, and then Vettel comes and just obliterates the field.
Exactly, and you mentioned Senna. You saw Senna do that many occasions, finding time from a car around a circuit that was hard to believe, and Vettel is, as you said, able to do that now. And you've got to understand how difficult that is to do. I mean, these guys are already on the limit with these cars, already on the limit with the tires, the downforce. Where do you just find 0.4 of a second? Pull out the air. You've got to just understand how difficult that is to do and how special it is to be able to do that, and the performance that Vettel did.
Especially, I think, also when previous times you're within hundredths and thousands of a second. Incredible. Let's talk Vettel, because he had a brilliant start. He pulled out an incredible gap, and I think, yes, he did have his problem. Unfortunately, the Renault engine, it seems as though the alternator, both him and Grosjean, gave him problems. But if you are McLaren and Ferrari and Mercedes and Lotus, you've got to be very, very worried at the pace that Vettel is getting out of the Red Bull.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, talk after the Grand Prix in Monaco with the hole in the diffuser and them having to revert, went to Canada. The car was pretty okay there. Yesterday's performance, yes, it has got everybody thinking, no doubt about it. I think they all can remember what happened last year. Vettel walked off, and it is going to make everybody's job a little bit more difficult. So, Mark Webber unfortunately qualified down the order yesterday, but you saw he drove up to fourth. He also had a fantastic race, a little bit out of the limelight, you could say, but had a fantastic race. So the Red Bull is strong at the moment, and listen, it was always going to be hard to beat Adrian Newey.
Yeah, I mean, so Vettel and Red Bull. Why are we talking Red Bull? We might as well talk Mark Webber, because Mark won, of course. He'd won in Monaco. All right. But so far, I think he's had 5 fourth places. And for those who are unaware, he's actually second in the World Championship. So his consistency is amazing. He drove a brilliant race from 19th yesterday up until 4th. He's under the radar, but he is still super quick.
He's just got to keep... He is a quick driver. And just in Formula One, you're comparing drivers on tenths of seconds. I mean, these are the top guys, and the top 10 guys, 12 guys. There's no doubt they are definitely some of the best drivers in the world. And you're saying, well, where was 2/10 off Vettel? Oh well, who are they going to replace him with? I mean, 2/10, come on, it's nothing, at that level. But yes, if he keeps on doing what he's doing, keeps on putting the results in there, keeping those fourth places, you can actually set yourself up for a very good championship finish, and in fact win a world championship like this. So he's doing the job that he needs to do.
Yeah, very, very consistent. Lots to talk about, but I want to get we've got to go through, unfortunately, the disappointments. Romain Grosjean, terrific start. The way that he hustled his way through, Gary, as well. He can be a little bit of a loose cannon at the start, but he seems to be maturing very, very quickly. Kept his nose out of trouble, but managed to get the moves going. And then desperately unlucky. I mean, he had a very good chance of winning that race.
He certainly did. You've got to assume that the heat affected the Renault engines yesterday. The alternators packed up, as we said. But Grosjean, I think, drove fantastically well. At the end of the day, also outpacing Kimi Raikkonen. And Kimi Raikkonen was also a special driver. Grosjean is quick. I mean, if you look back at Grosjean's career, Formula 3, GP2, he was blistering all the way through. And I'm glad he's got the second chance, making the most of it now. As you said, calm down at the start, getting through. Look, I think at the restart he could have perhaps done a little bit better, not allowed Alonso through. However, it wouldn't have made a difference. But he's right up there, and he's got to be now, at the top of a lot of people's shopping lists.
Yeah, I mean, Lotus are going to do everything to keep those two together, Raikkonen and Grosjean. But I mean, if you're another team, you've got to be looking at Grosjean to come in there as well, and I'm talking big teams as well.
Well, I mean, look, Ferrari's the first one that springs to mind. You're looking for a replacement driver. Perez is mentioned, in connection with that seat. However, I mean, if you look at Grosjean's performance of late, he's got to be the guy. I mean, he's smooth. He looks after the car, looks after the tires, and he's quick.
Yeah, he is super quick. All right, so that's just a little bit of what happened in the Formula One yesterday. Still got a lot to talk about yesterday. Some of the penalties that were given out during the course of the race. Some of the others that were unlucky. And then, of course, we'll have to talk a lot about Fernando Alonso, who just is the driver of Formula One at the moment. So stay rare. In studio with me, of course, before and after every single Formula One Grand Prix is Gary Formato. And we're discussing yesterday's European Grand Prix. If you missed the race, just to let you know the results. Fernando Alonso won for Ferrari. Second was Kimi Raikkonen for Lotus. And making it onto the podium the first time since he's returned back to Formula One, Michael Schumacher for Mercedes GP. It was one of the most electrifying Grand Prix we've had this season. And believe you me, we've had 8. And out of them, 7 have been just outstanding. Yesterday was something really, really special. Yes, there was heartbreak for Sebastian Vettel. He had a massive lead. Then we had a safety car intervention, Gary, which all of a sudden had bunched everything up. Alonso had an incredible restart, got ahead of Grosjean, but it looked like Vettel, was going to have the pace on everyone, but it didn't last more than a lap, and all of a sudden Vettel's car just stopped.
No, it didn't. But just let me first say, when you speak about an event the next day and you're getting hyped up all over again, it was something. It was great. But it was awesome stuff. But Alonso set his afternoon up fantastically well. I mean, he made overtakes in the beginning of the race and put himself in the position where at the end, after that safety car, was able to get past Grosjean. Okay, in a way inherited the win, but I mean, to have driven from where he did on the grid to where he was an outstanding drive on a track that's notoriously difficult to overtake. Sure. Everybody said, well, this is going to be boring, we can't do it. Fernando Alonso did it. He was right there, got stuck in at that restart and made the overtaking opportunity, made it stick.
It was, I mean, there were so many great overtaking moves during the course of yesterday. Let's talk about the safety car intervention. I think it was the Kobayashi accident that caused the safety car to come out, and then of course everyone was sort of bottled up again. There's a little bit of inconsistency, Gary, when it comes to the FIA stewards dealing out penalties. So let's just get that out of the way. Senna was seen to cause an accident and was given a drive-through penalty. Then Kobayashi caused an accident with Massa, and what did he get?
Well, this is the thing, it doesn't make any sense, as you said. I mean, the Kobayashi, the Senna incident, in any event. Look, Senna did move over. I think the Sauber could have got out of it and
sure.
Not made the accident happen. So it is a very difficult one. So Senna up until that point was actually having a good race, and it was a big blow for him. But yeah, you just wonder if the guys have missed on the screen or what's going on in the steward's office that they make the kind of calls that they do. I mean, you've got racing drivers in there. Miko Sala, I think yesterday was in the steward's room. Is it personal vendettas? Who knows how it all works out? But sometimes it just doesn't add up.
Another one as well, Jean-Eric Verne, he did. Listen, he came out, he admitted it was his mistake. He apologized to Heikki Kovalainen, and Kovalainen accepted apology. He admitted it was a rookie mistake. He moved over, and unfortunately, him and the caterer of Kovalainen connected. Then Verne now has been given a penalty, I think 5-place grid penalty, plus 10-place grid penalty. I think plus... is it 25,000 euro?
Correct, 250 grand. Yeah,
250,000 rand fine for a guy who's probably paying for his own drive. That's going to hurt quite a bit there.
Yeah, look, it's what I liked about it all is he tweeted Heikki Kovalainen and said, "Look, my apologies, not a rookie error." And that I think was pretty big for Verne. It one of those mistakes that you look at and you wonder how it happened. What possessed him to turn into Kovalainen there? Perhaps just trying to get back and cover the corner. It was a racing incident as well, and I think both the drivers sort of understand it. But as long as they're meeting out the penalties, as you said, consistently, it's not a bad thing. And also, you've got to remember, Formula One, although they got away with it with the puncture and a damaged rim or whatever, when single seaters interlock wheels, they do take off. I mean, they are extremely doing 300 k's an hour or close to anyway on a street circuit. So the guys do need to pay attention.
Very, very, turn out to be a lot worse, but fortunately it didn't. Let's talk McLaren. There's a couple of things I want to talk about. First of all, Lewis Hamilton. I still think Lewis is struggling, Gary, to make his tyres last the kind of distance that other drivers and other teams are managing to do that. However, we know he's super, super fast. Great first pit stop. And then it all went wrong again in the second pit stop for Lewis Hamilton, where he had a chance to win the race.
Yeah, they did. Just on the tyre issue, yes, you've got to be fast. As you said, you've got to look after your tyres. Whether it's a setup issue on the car, if the car perhaps is running too hard or whatever, they would know. We can't tell you what it is from here, but maybe they need to relook at that and give Hamilton some pace during the race and enable the car to look after the tyres. It can qualify well, and we've seen it all year. It's qualified well, and it has gone nowhere in the race. When it comes to McLaren's pit stops, what can you say? I mean, it's just been a dismal year for them. Changed the rear end. They had all the rear end issues with it. They've changed the system that they use to keep the nut system on the wheel. And then they've introduced this new fancy jack, which they can move over to one side and release the car in a couple of tenths quicker. And it had
it collapsed.
A mechanical failure on the jack yesterday. I mean, that's a McLaren jack,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is something that they obviously look into. It's something that's new. It's recently implemented. They'll sort it out, but again, it affected Hamilton.
It really did, and I mean, listen, he had to fight all the way back from 6th. He got up into the podium position. He was doing very, very well, but then his tyres, as we go back, his tyres started going off. Then there was the very controversial issue with Pastor Maldonado and Lewis Hamilton, and this is where after hearing what the stewards had come out, Pastor Maldonado, for those of you who don't know, had the incident with Lewis Hamilton, basically took them both out of the race, but Lewis especially, and also from a podium position. Maldonado has since then been given a 20-second penalty from the race of yesterday, meaning, Gary, the way that I read it, that as much as he was off the racing line, and one can only look at the rule book to say you have to be on the race track, not the racing line, the race track itself. There were other extenuating circumstances which went in the favor of Maldonado.
Yeah, it did. From my point of view, I think Hamilton could have possibly left a little bit more space, knowing that Maldonado was there. You got to ask yourself the question: if it had been a circuit where there was grass off the circuit, he probably would have been looked on a little less favourably because he'd been right at the circuit. But because there was, the street circuit, and you can drive over the white lines, the guys are saying, well, maybe it's racing. But I don't know. From my point of view, it's a pure racing incident. I think both drivers needed to pay attention. Lewis Hamilton was slow at the time. He was all over the track. He was defending aggressively. But it's his right to. They're racing for position.
Of course.
So irrespective of whether he was 3 seconds slow or 4 seconds slow, he has the right to defend. So I can understand Maldonado's frustration in saying, well, Hamilton was slow and all over the road. He was defending his position. So, I wouldn't want to certainly apportion blame to anybody in that incident. I think both guys racing hard, seeing an opportunity, and just going for it. And this, at the end of the day, it's also why we watch motor racing. The guys are fighting it out.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want to see as well. Got to feel desperate for Lewis because he lost out on most probably a good points haul, but also Pastor Maldonado because he had a really, really good race. Maybe not a great start, but he fought his way back, and that Williams really looked good.
It is. Williams are looking good. Of course, we know what happened in Barcelona, but it looked good. Good qualifying from Maldonado this weekend again. Things looking up for the team. So, to throw away points like that as well, from a team point of view, I think is pretty frustrating. They need every point they can get. The team is on the up, and they need to just solidify their position now. But nonetheless, Maldonado, I think, making impact in Formula One. Shaking his pay driver tag, which I think is very, very important for him.
Very much.
But
so.
His penalty did give the place to Senna, which you could probably say deserved it after his incident.
Most probably as well. I want to go back to McLaren. Jenson Button. And I think he's a smooth driver. I think he's a very, very classy driver as well. But all of a sudden, Gary, he started the season with a victory. Third race, he got a second position. Since then, things have really gone backwards for him. And even yesterday, we saw the pace of Lewis. We didn't see that kind of pace from Jenson Button.
Yeah, we haven't. I've got to be honest, and Jenson Button surprised me since he's arrived at McLaren. I thought that Jenson Button, what's happening to him now would be happening to him when he first arrived at McLaren. I think a lot of people did, and he's really shocked the world and had some outstanding performances. So I think, yes, the speed is there. They obviously just don't have the right setup on the car for Jenson, for him to extract the most out of the car. His tyres last well in the race. Perhaps are they compromising the outright speed, with going that? I don't know. It's difficult to call, but there is an issue there. I think what Jenson Button's got to look out for now is the psychological effects of it. Lewis Hamilton being much faster on a regular basis is going to start to take its toll. So he needs to turn himself around pretty soon.
Yeah, well, pretty soon. I mean, it's a home Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time in Silverstone for the whole McLaren team, and of course both of their drivers as well, both world champions. There were so many talking points during the course of yesterday, but let's focus on the guys that, well, I suppose the top teams that managed to finish it. Michael Schumacher, this has been long overdue, Gary. We've waited this for a very, very long time. Yeah, assisted by a little bit of luck, guys taking each other out here and there. But his last stint, when him and Webber both decided to go in for tyres, and the way he held off Mark Webber and then just carried on going and passing and eventually getting onto the podium, was vintage Schumacher.
It was another great drive for Schumacher. We spoke about it, said when's his luck going to turn, and he needed to have a car that was reliable and let him do the job that he can do best, and that's go and drive a racing car extremely fast. It happened for him yesterday. Yes, it could have been a better result, that they qualified better, however, and as you said, people crashed, but they finished the race. They got through it. It was difficult for everybody yesterday. They did that. So it was great to see him. I think just on the podium, a lot of people have been wanting to see that for a long time, and I think Formula One in general has. So it was a great day, and this also for him may be a turning point for him and his team. You must remember it's the driver, but it's everybody else that puts their hands on that car and prepares that car. A good result like this does a lot for that.
Yeah, it really does. And then also, we were discussing it while we were watching the race. Nico Rosberg, he just blows too hot and cold, in my opinion.
Well, I have to agree with you, and it's always very difficult to sit and criticize drivers, because we know that the job that they're doing is not easy at all. But it was a great opportunity for Rosberg to be partnered with Michael Schumacher in Formula One and really dominate Schumacher. He's been on the sport for 3 years. He started off well. He hasn't been able to do it, and I don't think it bodes well for his F1 career, unfortunately for him. So in the races, he needs a couple of special performances. Like Schumacher yesterday coming through, Fernando Alonso, Mark Webber coming through the field.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to be able to do that.
And considering where he started on the grid, he started in 6th position. Schumacher started back in 12th position. And yet Rosberg just didn't seem to do anything. We hardly even saw Rosberg during the course of the race. I think got to be honest, Mercedes also got their strategies wrong. They thought the one stopper was going to work, and it was impossible that it was ever going to work.
Look, it wasn't. And you've got to looked at the last Grand Prix, drivers tried in a one-stopper, it didn't work. A couple of them got it sort of semi-right and whatever, but I think at the end of the day, starting at the front end of the field, you can't afford to take that chance. So you've got to be on the right tyre for the condition and keep your lap times going, otherwise you are going to fall behind, get into traffic, and the race is done. So Rosberg, I know, obviously complaining about the strategy, however the drivers are key in making those strategies.
Yeah. All right. Still want to talk about Alonso parking his car on the after he had won the Grand Prix. Lots of people asking about that, the DRS with Michael Schumacher, why there wasn't any penalty or what actually happened there. And then also reflecting back to take you to Bahrain in 2006 and the European Grand Prix from yesterday with exactly the same drivers on the podium. So stay with us right here on Gears. yesterday, which has completely converted me, I must say, to a lover of the Valencia circuit, just because I think with the aid of some incredible driving, but also with the way the Pirelli tires work, just allows for guys to be a little bit more aggressive sometimes and make passes stick.
Well, that's right, and you just got to look at Fernando Alonso's overtakes on Mark Webber around the outside of a very, very sharp right-hander, and he got the job done. You know, a couple of other guys maybe should have, taken notes of that, and it was a good overtaking opportunity. That's
it. And Vic, our other presenter on Formula One, he just tweeted me to remind me to sit there and say Pastor Maldonado also got through past Webber. Remember into the final corner, and he pushed Webber wide off the track as well. So he comes back and says, so Hamilton mustn't so he must not complain about Hamilton pushing him off as well. So there we go. But let's get into the way that it all went out. Hamilton had all sorts of problems when it came into the pit lane. The restart was incredible for Fernando Alonso. Got into the front, then inherited the lead with the problem of Sebastian Vettel. Grosjean looked as though perhaps he would be able to chase the likes of Fernando Alonso, but whether or not he would have been able to pass him, we'll never ever know. Raikkonen then came through the field, and the two of them basically just sort of leveled the playing fields. The Schumacher and Webber went in to get the new sets of tyres, and of course we were watching the timing screens. But Gary, they were too far back to challenge for the lead, but it was incredible to watch the two of them go through the traffic.
Yeah, it was a great battle, and Mark Webber chased Schumacher very, very hard, obviously looking for the position. It just wasn't to be, but everybody that did get through the race in one piece overtook and got it to the end. I mean, did a fantastic job yesterday. The fact that the track is difficult to overtake on remains.
Yes.
Okay. But yesterday, the tyres, you said, it did allow it. It gave the guys the opportunity, but still very hard to do it. And then we saw a lot of that yesterday. And I think it's you got to take your head up to the tyre grid, for providing the spectacle.
And I think for the way that they drove, because if you watch the GP2 and GP3 races, there was some overtaking, but there were a lot of bashing as well of cars. So I think the drivers in Formula One show why they're actually in Formula One. Let's talk about Fernando Alonso, because they had a dismal qualifying on the Saturday. Somehow they made a very strange call in Q3. But Alonso, no matter where he starts, Gary, you know that he is going to be in the pack. I mean, he's just incredible off the start. I mean, he made up like 4 or 5 positions. I think got up to 6th place. But then if you watched him, he was right on the back of one of the Force Indias, and then he sort of dropped back. And then his tyres came in again, and then bang! All of a sudden, he passed. A couple of guys, was up into 4th.
This is the deal with Alonso. I think a thinking driver to the T. I mean, he can work it out, look after the tyres, as you just said, use them when he needs to use them. He can overtake. He can drive super quickly. There's no doubt about that. He is the business. And I thought about it a couple of times, saying, Alonso's lost opportunities in his career. The McLaren debacle, stuck in Renault for 2 years. The Ferrari hasn't been that great. He's only 30 years old. I mean, this guy is still going to produce some mega results in Formula One. And yesterday was just one of those days that you just look at a driver, look at a sportsman. When people achieve things like Alonso did yesterday, you look at that and you just know that you're looking at something special. We saw it with Schumacher over the years, Valentino Rossi, for example, on MotoGP. Yesterday was one of those moments where, this guy is something unbelievable.
He was incredibly emotional. I mean, came out and said this could well be his best ever victory from an emotional point of view. And Alonso doesn't give too much away, but yesterday you could see that this was a huge relief to win his home Grand Prix. And then, of course, he stopped on the way. He stopped on the way back after finishing the lap. But we'll talk about that. But very emotional, very, very important for him.
A huge win. I mean, any driver to race in front of your home crowd, to win a Grand Prix in front of your home crowd, I mean, it is something that very, very few people get to do in their careers. It was just huge. And you also don't know what else has been going on behind the scenes with Alonso and what he's been doing to carry that car a lot of the times as well. I mean, I was at Ferrari at the beginning of the year, and the sentiment there was, basically the car's not good enough, and we'll get through and we'll focus on next year and the year after that. I mean, the guy's leading the championship now. I mean, it's huge. I don't even think the insiders expected to be where they are right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's really giving tremendous morale for that team. Gary, I suppose there are a lot of people asking, hey, he finished and then the car stopped, and isn't this against the rules? Doesn't he have to bring it back to Parc Fermé, and will he get a penalty, etc., etc.? There's a very, very distinct difference between the race and qualifying.
Correct. In qualifying, you need to bring the car back to the pits under its own power with enough fuel to do a fuel sample. It's as simple as that. In the race, as long as there's fuel enough to take the sample, you can stop out in the circuit. So it's a different sort of deal.
Yeah, and it makes its weight as well. Listen, it was great for us as fans to sit there and he grabbing the flag and then, carrying on to the crowd, which I think is terrific for the sport. But I'm sure Uncle Bernie and the stewards and everyone else wouldn't have looked too kindly on it.
Well, yes, I had the same thoughts, and it's a pity because it takes you back to the days of when Senna would win a race and the Brazilian flag would be at the car, Mansell would have the British flag. I think those sort of things, it's needed in Formula One. The spectators are really so remote and removed from the action and what actually happens in the paddock and so on. Yesterday was a great opportunity for them to see their hero standing at the fence and waving to the crowd. It's part of the deal. That's why people pay huge money to go and watch Grand Prix. And Bernie's got his reasons and his show works extremely well, so who am I to say? But yes, it was good to see the human side of things, and I think just savoured the moment as well for Fernando Alonso. It was good.
Yeah, it was very, very special. I suppose there's certain tracks you can and certain tracks you can't, because the people just mob the circuit afterwards, and then you could find a Grand Prix driver missing amongst the thousands of fans as well. It was another electrifying race. I'm going to try and get Vic to come in tomorrow just to give us why some cars were quicker than others, because it's a really interesting debate as well. If you look at what happened in Canada and you look at also what happened yesterday, why some cars didn't have that opportunity on DRS, and I think Vic really knows that answer very, very well, so I'm going to try and get him tomorrow to explain it. Gary, another sensational race, Silverstone, a very, very fast track coming up in 2 weeks. You've got to sit there and say the Red Bulls are going to be very, very fast. Merc could be quick, and Lotus, Ferrari still have work to do. Do you think they've got the all-out pace to at least challenge?
I think Ferrari are going to be in the race next weekend. Look at the weather at the moment over in Britain. It's not good. There's a lot of rain. The result last year was brought about by that. Fernando Alonso won that race. So Fernando's on a high at the moment. If the conditions allow him to perform like that, and we probably will need rain or something of that sort, he's going to be up there. But yeah, Red Bull, McLaren. McLaren's a team under pressure, though. Red Bull, they've got the pace. McLaren, a team under pressure. They've, as we said, they've got to look after their tyres. Get on top of the setup and start bringing home the results. They've got a quick car. Ultimately, it needs to perform in the race.
Yeah, there we go. Gary, always great to see you. Great to have a chat with you about Formula One. I'm sure we'll chat again very, very soon.
Cool. Thanks for having me here.
There we go. Gary Formato talking about the European Grand Prix. Thanks.
GearsOnBulls.co.za with Sasha Martinengo.
He's kept himself out of trouble.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time.